The moment my grandson spoke his first words, after 7 years of silence, I understood that someone in my family wanted me gone. My name is Margaret Hale. I am 67 years old, and I live on the quiet north side of Austin, Texas, in a modest house I paid off years ago, with careful work and even more careful saving. I never thought I would be telling a story like this. At my age, you believe surprises belong to the young. You believe danger announces itself loudly. I was wrong on both counts. That Monday morning began like any other family favor disguised as love. My son Daniel stood in my driveway, loading suitcases into the back of his SUV, checking his watch, already half gone in his mind. His wife Claire hovered nearby, immaculate as always, her smile practiced, her voice soft in a way that never quite reached her eyes. They were leaving for a 7-day retreat. No work calls, no stress, just the two of them and a resort far from Austin. And they were leaving their son with me. Noah was 7, small for his age, dark eyes that missed nothing, officially nonverbal since toddlerhood. Doctors used phrases like limited communication and developmental delay. Over the years, those words hardened into facts no one questioned anymore. No one except me. I loved that boy fiercely. Caring for him exhausted me, yes, but it also gave my days meaning. Silence does that. It makes you listen harder. It makes you notice things others overlook. "Are you sure you can manage a whole week?" Daniel asked, not for the first time. His tone carried concern, but also relief, the kind people feel when responsibility is being passed along. "I raised you alone after your father died," I said, pulling my sweater tighter against the cool morning air. "I can handle my grandson." Claire stepped closer and placed a small box on my kitchen counter before they left. Inside were neatly arranged tea bags, each one labeled in her tidy handwriting. "Herbal blend for sleep and blood pressure. Drink one every evening. It helps with memory, too." She said it lightly, sweetly, as if it were a gift. I thanked her, because that is what polite women do, even when something inside them tightens for no clear reason. Noah stood quietly by my side, clutching the frayed corner of his favorite blanket. He did not look at his parents when they hugged him goodbye. He looked at me. His fingers slipped into my hand. His grip was stronger than usual. When the car finally disappeared down the street, the house changed. I felt it immediately. The air settled. The tension lifted. It was just the two of us now. 7 days, I said gently to Noah as we went back inside. "Just you and me." He looked up at me then, really looked at me, and for a brief second, something passed between us. Awareness, intention, almost like a question waiting to be asked. Then he turned away, sat on the floor, and began lining up his toys as he always did. I told myself I imagined it. I would soon learn that imagination had nothing to do with it. The first few hours passed quietly, the way I expected they would. Noah sat on the living room rug, arranging his toy animals into precise lines, adjusting them again and again until they felt right to him. I worked on a crossword at the dining table, listening to the familiar sounds of the house settling. Without Claire's constant instructions and reminders, the place felt softer, almost kinder. Around mid-morning, I decided to make tea. It felt silly to avoid it right away. Claire would notice if I didn't touch the box all week. Besides, I told myself, I was being paranoid. She might be controlling, but poisoning me was a dramatic leap even for my imagination. I filled the kettle and placed one of the neatly labeled tea bags into my favorite mug. As the water heated, a faint smell drifted upward. Chamomile, yes, but also something sharper, medicinal, like the inside of a clinic. I hesitated. For a moment, I stood there staring at the steam, telling myself not to be ridiculous. Age does strange things to suspicion. You start seeing danger where there is none. That was when I heard movement behind me. Not the soft patting I was used to, but deliberate steps. Slow, careful. The kettle clicked off. I lifted it, poured the water, and watched the liquid darken far more than chamomile ever should. Then came the sound that stopped my heart. Grandma. It was quiet, almost a whisper, but it was clear, perfectly formed. Do not drink the tea. My hand jerked. The mug tipped, sloshing hot liquid onto the counter. I turned so fast I nearly lost my balance. Noah stood in the doorway. He was looking straight at me, not past me, not down at the floor, at me. Grandma, please, do not drink that. The room felt suddenly too small, the air too thin. My ears rang as if I had stood up too quickly, except I had not moved at all. Noah, I said, or tried to. My voice came out weak. Did you just speak? He nodded. A simple motion, calm, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. My knees gave out and I sat heavily in the chair by the counter. For 7 years, I had imagined his voice, high or low, soft or rough. I had imagined first words, first sentences, moments that never came. And now, here they were, arriving all at once, without warning. You can talk, I whispered. Yes, Grandma. How long? He looked down at his hands, twisting the fabric of his shirt. A long time. Something in my chest cracked open. Joy tried to rush in, but fear got there first. Why didn't you tell anyone? He stepped closer, his small face tight with something no child should carry. Because Mama said I must not. She said if I talked, bad things would happen to you. The words landed slowly, one after another, each heavier than the last. I looked at the mug on the counter. The dark tea steaming quietly as if nothing were wrong. My heart began to pound harder, faster. What do you mean, bad things, sweetheart? Noah swallowed. Mama put something in the tea, something that makes you sleepy and confused. She said if you drank enough, you would stop waking up. The mug slid from the counter and shattered on the tile. I barely noticed. All I could see was my grandson, standing in front of me, finally speaking the truth he had been forced to bury. And I understood then that the silence I thought defined him had never been his weakness. It had been his prison. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound in the kitchen was the faint ticking of the clock above the sink and the slow drip of tea spreading across the tile. I stared at the shattered mug as if it were proof that the world I thought I lived in had just broken apart. I pulled Noah toward me and wrapped my arms around him. He was warm, real, breathing. Not a vision, not a dream brought on by age or stress. You do not ever have to be afraid to talk to me, I said, my voice shaking despite my effort to keep it steady. Never. He leaned into my shoulder, stiff at first, then slowly relaxed. I wanted to tell you before, Grandma, he said softly. So many times. But Mama watches everything. I sat back and looked at him, really looked at him, not as the quiet child everyone thought they understood, but as someone who had been living a double life inside his own home. Tell me, I said. Tell me everything. We have time now. He nodded, drawing a slow breath, as if preparing for something difficult. Mama taught me how to pretend, he said. When I was little, she said doctors like quiet kids, that if I talked, they would give me shots that hurt and make me sleep all day. My stomach twisted. She said Daddy would be sad too, that he would think I was broken. So I learned not to talk when other people were around. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. This was not discipline. This was conditioning. How long have you known how to talk, Noah? He thought for a moment. Since I was 3, maybe earlier. I remember words before that, But that is when I started answering in my head instead of out loud. 3 years old. I closed my eyes briefly, imagining a toddler learning that silence was safer than truth. "Does your father know you can talk?" I asked. Noah shook his head. "Not really. Sometimes I think he knows something is wrong, but Mama tells him I am fragile, that too much change would hurt me." The picture became clearer with every sentence. Claire did not just control the house. She controlled the story everyone believed about her son. "I hear things," Noah continued, "when they think I am asleep. Grown-ups talk loudly at night." He lifted his eyes to mine. They were steady, observant. "Mama says you are getting worse, that you forget things and make bad decisions. She says soon you will not be able to live alone." A memory stirred. Claire's gentle suggestions. "Maybe you should write things down. Maybe it is time to think about help." I always thought she was being considerate. "When did she start putting things in my tea?" I asked quietly. Noah did not hesitate. "About 2 years ago." My breath caught. "That is when you started falling asleep on the couch all the time," he said, "and forgetting words. Mama said it was normal, that old people fade." Old people fade. I felt sick. "She crushes pills," Noah added. "Very small. She puts them on the tea bag so you will not see them." My hands curled into fists in my lap. "Why tell me now?" I asked, though I already sensed the answer. "Because they are gone," he said. "And because yesterday I heard Mama on the phone. She said this week needed to be stronger, faster." He looked at me, fear flickering across his face. "Grandma, I did not want you to disappear." The room felt unbearably quiet again, but this time it was not peaceful. It was the quiet of realization. My grandson had not been silent because he could not speak. He had been silent because he was surviving. I did not cry. That surprised me later. When I thought back on that moment, I had expected tears, shaking, some kind of collapse. Instead, a strange calm settled over me, the kind that comes when fear finally has a shape. Care would have been messy. Care would have been inconsistent. What Noah was describing was neither. It was a plan. I poured the ruined tea down the sink, rinsed the mug shards into the trash, and wiped the counter clean with slow, deliberate movements. Noah watched me closely, as if measuring whether I would fall apart. I would not give Claire that satisfaction, even in her absence. "Tell me about the phone call," I said once we were seated again at the table. Noah folded his hands the way he did when he was concentrating. Mama was in the bedroom packing. She thought I was playing with my trains. She put her phone on speaker. He paused, then continued, repeating the words with unsettling accuracy. "She said you were lasting longer than she expected, that the pills worked but not fast enough." She laughed a little and said this trip was perfect because no one would ask questions. My chest tightened. "Did she say anything else?" "She said she made the tea stronger this time, enough that you would not wake up after a few days. She said Daddy would finally be free." Free? I tasted the word like something bitter on my tongue. "Did your father say anything?" I asked. Noah hesitated. That told me more than words. He said it made him nervous. He asked if it was safe. Mama told him doctors would blame your age and your heart. She said men always panic before things are done. I closed my eyes. Daniel had always avoided conflict. Even as a boy, he preferred silence over confrontation. Claire had learned that quickly. She spoke. He yielded. Over time, yielding turned into permission. This was not an accident of neglect. It was cooperation through fear. Noah shifted in his chair. "Mama says you are stubborn," he added quietly, "that if you do not slow down, you will ruin everything. Everything. The house, the savings, the future she imagined." She says once you are gone, Daddy will sell the house and move closer to her sister. She already looked at places online. I felt a slow burn rise in my chest. Not wild rage, but something steadier. Purpose. For 2 years, I had doubted myself, blamed my body, questioned my mind. I had apologized for forgetting things that were never lost. I had accepted help I did not need. All because someone decided my life was inconvenient. This was never about concern for my health, I said aloud. More to myself than to Noah. It was about control. He nodded. She likes when people do what she says. I looked at him then. Really looked. A child who had learned patterns adults refused to see. A child who had learned that silence could be armor. She picked this week for a reason, I continued. No witnesses. No interruptions. No one checking on me. Noah's voice dropped. She said if something happened, Daddy would be too sad to think clearly. That grief makes people sign things without reading. That was it. The final piece sliding into place. Claire had not just planned my death. She had planned what came after. The paperwork, the money, the story everyone would tell themselves so they could sleep at night. I reached across the table and took Noah's hands. Listen to me very carefully, I said. You did exactly the right thing. You saved my life. His eyes filled, but he did not cry. What happens now? He asked. I straightened my back, feeling something inside me lock into place. Now, we stop pretending I am the only one in danger. Because if she can silence me, I said slowly, she will never stop using your silence too. And this time, we are not going to disappear quietly. We waited until late afternoon. I do not know why, exactly. Maybe part of me still hoped I was wrong. Maybe I needed daylight to face whatever came next. Noah sat beside me on the couch, silent again whenever a car passed outside, his body slipping effortlessly back into the role he had played for most of his life. When the house was still, he stood up. Grandma, he said quietly, now that no one was watching, there's something you need to see. My stomach tightened. What is it? Mama keeps papers in my room. That alone was strange. Claire hated clutter. She hated leaving things where they did not belong. The idea that she hid something in a child's room meant she believed it was the safest place in the house. She thinks I cannot read, Noah added, and she thinks no one ever looks under my bed. We went upstairs slowly. Every step felt louder than it should have, as if the house itself was listening. Noah's room was small and neat, too neat for a 7-year-old. The toys were lined up, not scattered. The bedspread was smooth, tucked tight at the corners. He knelt and reached underneath, pulling out a thin cardboard box. Inside it was a manila folder, thick, heavy. My hands trembled as I opened it and sat down on the edge of the bed. Noah climbed up beside me, close but not touching, as if bracing himself. The first page was printed from a medical website. Early signs of cognitive decline in aging adults. Several sections were highlighted. Memory lapses, increased fatigue, confusion, personality changes. I swallowed hard. The next page discussed medication interactions in elderly patients, sedatives, blood pressure drugs, warnings about cumulative effects. More highlights, more notes in the margins. Careful dosage over time reduces suspicion. I felt cold. The third page was worse. Managing elderly relatives when independent living becomes unsafe. There were handwritten notes beside certain paragraphs. Avoid confrontation. Document behavior changes. Control medication intake. Gradual dependency is key. I could barely breathe. Then I reached the last section of the folder. A lined notebook page. Dated entries. Written neatly, methodically. Progress log MH. My initials. January 12, increased dose, slight confusion noticed. March 3, fell asleep, mid-conversation, no resistance. May 18, asked about finances redirect worked. August 7, neighbors commented on decline, stay alert. October 2, accelerate plan during travel window. My vision blurred. This was not concern. This was experimentation. At the bottom of the page, one final line was underlined twice. Projected outcome within 72 hours of increased intake. No name, no emotion, just certainty. I pressed the paper to my chest and closed my eyes. For a moment, I felt the weight of every day I had doubted myself, every apology I had made for being tired, every time I had laughed off my own fear. Noah watched me, his face pale but steady. She checks it sometimes, he said. If the folder is moved, she notices. I took a deep breath and forced myself to think. We will put it back exactly where it was, I said. Exactly. He nodded immediately. I know how. We replaced the folder, slid the box back under the bed, smoothed the blanket just the way it had been. Noah adjusted the toys until they were perfect. Then we went back downstairs. In the kitchen, the sunlight slanted across the floor, warm and ordinary. I leaned against the counter, suddenly exhausted, not from weakness, but from clarity. They were not waiting for me to decline. They were making it happen. I looked at my grandson, this brave, silent witness to a crime that had been unfolding in plain sight. Thank you for trusting me, I said softly. He met my eyes. You believed me. And that, I realized, was the one thing Claire had never planned for. Because now, I had proof. And I was no longer alone. That night, I did not sleep. I lay in my bed, listening to the house breathe, every creak and sigh suddenly sounding deliberate. For 2 years, this place had been my home. Now, it felt like a stage where I had unknowingly played the role Claire assigned me. The confused old woman, the fading mother, the obstacle quietly removing herself. By morning, fear had hardened into resolve. If Claire believed I was declining, then that was exactly what I would let her see. By 9 o'clock, I was moving slower on purpose. I let my hands shake just a little when I poured my coffee. I repeated myself when I spoke to the neighbor who waved from across the street. When the phone rang and it was Daniel checking in from the resort, I let my voice sound tired. You sound worn out, Mom, he said. I smiled into the receiver. I guess I didn't sleep well. There was a pause. Relief, not concern, filled the silence. That morning, after Daniel hung up, I made my first call. Not to the police. Not yet. To my attorney. His name was Richard Levinson. He had handled my estate planning years ago after my husband died. He knew how precise I was, how careful, how independent. When he heard my voice, he hesitated. Margaret, he said gently, are you feeling all right? That alone told me everything. The story Claire had been feeding the world was already working. I need to see you today, I said, privately. And I need a medical referral you trust. There was another pause. Then his voice changed. I'll be ready in an hour. I told Noah what we were doing. He listened carefully, nodding like someone far older than 7. In front of others, you stay exactly the same, I reminded him. Quiet, no words. He exhaled slowly. I know, I can do that. And I would act weaker, forgetful, cooperative. By the time we reached Richard's office, my hands were trembling for real, though not from age, from adrenaline. The doctor he sent me to that afternoon was thorough. No family present, no Claire, no Daniel. Blood tests, cognitive exams, questions designed to catch real decline. I passed them all. But something else appeared clearly. Long-term sedative exposure. Low dose, cumulative. Enough to dull reaction time and memory. Enough to confuse. Enough to make a healthy woman look fragile. The doctor looked at me carefully. "Someone has been medicating you without your knowledge," he said. "Over a long period." I nodded. I already knew. By the time I got home, my hands were steady for the first time in months. Richard called that evening. "This is serious, Margaret," he said. "Criminal. And the child is at risk, too." That was the word I needed to hear. Risk. Not just me. Noah. We began documenting everything. The tea bags, the timeline, the medical records, the folder under the bed. I photographed the evidence and stored copies in places Claire could never reach. All the while, I continued the performance. When Daniel called again, I forgot what day it was. When Claire texted asking if I was drinking the tea, I replied that it helped me sleep so deeply I barely remembered my dreams. She sent back a smiling face. That night, Noah sat across from me at the table, whispering as we planned our next steps. "She's coming back soon," he said. I nodded. Yes, and when she does, she will think she has already won. I reached across and squeezed his hand. But this time, we would be waiting. Not as victims. As witnesses. They came back on a Thursday afternoon. I knew the moment their car turned into the driveway. Noah stiffened beside me, then slipped back into his silence like a mask he had worn too long. I let my shoulders slump and my words slow, just enough to look uncertain. Claire walked in first. She looked rested, sun-warmed, smiling in that effortless way that used to make people trust her immediately. She crossed the kitchen, glanced at the counter, and her eyes flicked to the tea box. I saw the calculation there, the quiet check. "Did you remember your tea every night, Margaret?" she asked lightly. "Most nights," I said, rubbing my temple. "It helps. I sleep so much now." Her smile widened. Daniel followed, tired but relaxed. He hugged me, lingering a second longer than usual, as if confirming something he wanted to believe. "You look pale, Mom," he said. "I suppose that happens," I replied. "At my age." Claire's phone buzzed. She checked it, then looked up. "Oh, before I forget," she said casually, "we have an appointment tomorrow, a specialist, just to be safe." I nodded. Of course. That evening, after they went to bed, Richard's final call came through. Everything was ready. The next morning, Claire expected control. What she did not expect was the knock at the door. Two people stood there, a physician she did not recognize, and a woman from Child Protective Services. Claire's smile faltered. "Is something wrong?" she asked. The physician spoke calmly. "We need to speak with Margaret privately." Claire's eyes darted to Daniel. He looked confused, uneasy. I stood slowly. My hands did not shake. And then Noah did something Claire had not planned for. He spoke. "I can talk," he said. The room froze. Claire turned so fast she nearly dropped her phone. Daniel stared at his son as if seeing him for the first time. Noah walked to the center of the room. His voice was steady, clear. "Mama told me to pretend. She said if I talked, Grandma would disappear. She said no one would believe me." Silence fell like a weight. The CPS worker knelt to Noah's level. "Can you tell me more?" He nodded. And he did. About the pills, the tea, the threats, the nights he listened, the folder under his bed. He did not rush. He did not cry. He spoke like someone who had been waiting a long time to be heard. Claire screamed then. Not denial. Anger. "He's confused. He doesn't understand what he's saying." The physician turned to her. "We've already reviewed the evidence." Daniel's face drained of color as the truth finally cornered him. He tried to speak, failed, then sank into a chair. "This is not what I wanted," he whispered. No one answered him. Claire was escorted out within the hour. Daniel was left with paperwork, questions, and a reality he could no longer avoid. Noah sat beside me, quiet again now, his hand warm in mine. For the first time since I met him, he was believed. Not because he was loud, but because the truth finally had nowhere left to hide. The house was quiet again after they left. Not the heavy silence that presses on your ears, but a softer one, the kind that feels like space opening up, possibility. Noah sat at the kitchen table, swinging his legs, watching the sunlight crawl slowly across the floor. No one was watching him now. No one was measuring him. He spoke when he wanted to. That alone felt like a miracle. In the weeks that followed, life rearranged itself carefully, piece by piece. Noah stayed with me, temporarily, at first, then permanently. Specialists confirmed what I had already learned. He was not nonverbal. He was deeply intelligent, traumatized, conditioned into silence. With proper support, his words came easier each day. Sometimes they came in bursts, sometimes slowly, always honestly. As for me, the fog lifted completely. Without the sedatives, my thoughts sharpened. I woke up rested. I remembered names, dates, small joys I thought age had taken from me. It turned out my mind had never been failing. It had been buried. Legal proceedings moved forward quietly. Claire faced charges for poisoning and child abuse. Daniel lost custody, not because he was cruel, but because he had chosen fear over protection. That truth hurt him more than any punishment. I updated my will, locked down my accounts, put every safeguard in place to ensure no one could ever speak for me again without my consent. But the real healing did not come from paperwork. It came in the evenings. Noah and I would sit at the table, doing homework, talking about dinosaurs and space and questions he had been holding inside for years. Sometimes he would stop mid-sentence, surprised by his own voice. "I like talking now," he told me once. I smiled. So do I. Silence had been used as a weapon in our family, a way to erase, to control, to make inconvenient people disappear without noise. But silence can be broken, and when it is, it does not whisper. It tells the truth. 5 life lessons from this story. 1. Silence does not mean weakness. 2. Control often hides behind kindness. 3. Children see and understand far more than we assume. 4. Trust your instincts even when others dismiss them. 5. Speaking the truth at the right moment can save lives. If you stayed with me until the end, thank you. What lesson did you take from this story? And what city are you watching from? Please like, share, and comment so this story can reach others who need to hear it.